Welcome to our introductory video series about creating your own webinars. In this video, we'll look at what to present in your webinar and how to repurpose the content. So finally, let's cover what you're going to talk about in your webinar. What are you actually going to present? Okay, so as I've previously detailed, there are different types of webinars. There are webinars for training purposes. Paid training, for example. If someone has paid you, let's say $400 for an 8-week training course for one webinar a week, then it's effectively just coaching, and you would have to structure your lesson, and depending on the number of people you have viewing, if, for example, you have hundreds of people, you probably can't do Q&A. Maybe you can, but if you have hundreds of people viewing a coaching course, you may have to get people to email in questions, and then you can answer them in the webinar. But if you have hundreds of people viewing, you probably can't do Q&A then and there because you'll get overwhelmed with questions, and your webinar could drag on for hours. And obviously, people start getting bored. You want some structure. If your webinar wanders all over the place from one subject to another, then it's not a very good way to coach, really. You want a structured approach. So if you have a lot of people viewing, you might get them to email in their questions. If you have smaller numbers, you could do, let's say, of a 2-hour webinar, you could do an hour to an hour and a half of coaching, and then the last half hour perhaps for questions and answers. And people can send in questions via chat, for example. So that's a different approach. If you're coaching colleagues, and that may be just a few people, then the whole setup can be questions and answers, or maybe a half-hour presentation, and then Q&A for as long as they need. But if it's a sales presentation, as previously touched on, it's really beyond the scope of this video to talk you through how to structure a sales presentation because there's a lot of psychology there of how to phrase a call to action, how to put together strong offers, how to present the offer with a scarcity factor so people want to pick it up now, how to segue from the coaching part of the webinar to the sales part of the webinar. That's all been touched on, but briefly. You know, if you want to sell something, you have to provide relevant information, and you want people to sign up and attend the webinar and stay through to the end. So you want to keep selling them with the title, with the description of the webinar, and the subject of the webinar. Make it relevant to them and what you're going to be selling. And also, lists are good. 7 ways to, or 9 ways to avoid something. Lists often work well. Or give them a really strong benefit. Give them a reason to stay through to the end. Give them really good information that they want and want as much of as possible. And then at the end, start heading over to the sales presentation, to the close, the 10-minute sales presentation, the roundup close and call to action. Again, I can't really go into all that because that's a huge subject all by itself. And if you're interested enough, you can search for teleseminar or teleconference sales or webinar sales or selling through webinars or selling through teleconferences. I'm sure you'll find many articles and resources there. But even if you don't have resources, just give it a go. You have the basic structure and details. Just give them good information, lots of relevant information for the first 50 minutes, and in the last 10 minutes, say, look, we have a special offer, and it's related to what I've been talking about. For example, I've been talking about tips and tricks with Microsoft Word, and I have a special 8-week training course that's starting on Monday. And for the first 50 people who sign up, there's a special discount or special bonuses. Here's what's going to be covered in the 8 weeks, and here's what some people have said who've taken it previously. And then you can talk through some testimonials. For example, the testimonial could be, this is the best course I've ever taken in my life on Microsoft Word, or something like that. Genuine testimonials from people who loved the course previously. And then you're really leading into the product or the course, and you may want to make it genuinely scarce. So you make a special offer for the first 50 people, or the people who sign up in the next 24 hours. But make it a genuine offer. Don't run it endlessly, because then you lose credibility that way. And then add credibility for the course with testimonials if possible. Or with your track record if you have a great track record in the subject matter. If it's a difficult sale, maybe you want to do a trial. If it's an 8-week course, perhaps it's just $20 for the first 2 weeks. And then after that, they get billed the full $400 or $380, the difference, if they like what they're seeing. But if you have a lot of credibility, perhaps you can just go for the full $400 immediately, or maybe do a payment plan of $100 every 2 weeks, or $50 a week, or whatever you wish. But this is a whole huge different subject. So really, just try it. The best way to learn is just to dive into it, and with small numbers you can't go too wrong. Especially if you try it out on your friends and colleagues. Then you'll iron out a lot of the issues early on. So then at the end of the webinar, you have a call to action, you send them to a special offer page, and they sign up. And then you give them the product or take them through the course or whatever you're offering them. Okay, so what are we actually going to show them on the screen during the webinar? And also, are you going to have accompanying documents? I do recommend having accompanying documents. There are pros and cons. As I mentioned, if someone can't be in front of a computer, they can still take part by just phoning in if they have the accompanying document and they've printed it out. The accompanying document may be slides that follow along with your presentation, or it may just be bullet points of the most relevant points. And what you want to do is sign up for lots of different webinars in lots of different markets and lots of different teleconferences in lots of different markets, and just get a feel for what people are doing. That will give you ideas for your own, whether you want handouts with PDFs, for example. And how do they present it? Do they present it effectively as a PowerPoint presentation, or do they actually show you things on their computer? For example, if I were doing free training and a sales webinar on Microsoft Word, would I open up Word? Well, I probably would, wouldn't I? So I'd open up Microsoft Word and I'd show then and there the demonstration, the coaching part of the course, the webinar. Obviously, when you're sharing your screen, you have to be careful that confidential information and private stuff is well tucked away or on an entirely different computer. If it's your work computer, be careful with sensitive documents or private business documents and tuck them away. For example, I often do presentations, so I've disabled it, but often in Word, just as an example, there's a recently opened documents list at the bottom of the File menu, and people may see things there that you may not want them to see. So it's good to do a dry run and make sure that nothing's displayed that you don't want displayed. That's important. And if you do need to go to an area of your computer that needs to be private, as I previously explained, just press the pause button, and people can then hear you, but the screen freezes until you unpause it. Okay, I've gone to Microsoft PowerPoint, and I've opened up one of their sample files, one of their sample presentations. And if you wish, if it's a suitable format for your presentation, then you can use PowerPoint. You can just create a slideshow effectively. And here there are lots of slides. There's an overview slide, and that covers overview, brainstorming objectives, rules, and so on. There's another overview slide. There's a brainstorming objectives slide, and so on. And then you can do slideshow. And then it goes to full screen, and then it's displaying these slides, the sample slideshow. Perhaps you don't want it full screen because that way it makes it difficult to work with anything else, but I'll just click my mouse button and it moves on to the next slide. And if I click again, for example, such a slide, there are 2 bullet points, and that could be 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes of chat. There could easily be enough in these bullet points for you to talk for several minutes. And really, the bullet points are just, obviously it's useful for people to see the overview as well as you talking. That's the benefit of a webinar. They can see an overview and also listen to you talk about it in more detail. And also, if you wish, you can offer a PowerPoint presentation as a PDF. So again, people who can only phone in can listen to it and print it out. So there are different ways of doing it. Obviously, you need to create the PowerPoint presentation beforehand and make sure it's all looking the way you want it to look. Let's exit out of this now. Okay. And with these bullet points, do you want a very broad overview or do you want detailed reminders of important points? That's actually quite important if you're going to offer a PDF. The PDF, since they're going to receive it before the webinar, but again, how soon before the webinar are they going to get it? Are they going to see it just an hour or two before, or days before? Since they're going to see it before the webinar, if you're getting a lot of people to sign up for your webinar through curiosity because they really want to find out what you're talking about, do you want to give away exactly what you're talking about in the PDF? Or do you want to make it more of a broad overview so they can still listen in to really find out what you're talking about? That's an important thing to think about. So really what you want to be doing, as I said, is taking part in teleconferences and webinars to get a feel for how different types of presentations go. And whether you're doing a PowerPoint presentation or demonstrating something directly on your computer, whether you're doing a tutorial on Word or Excel, or you're demonstrating a new piece of software, or showing people through your website, or whatever you may be demonstrating, it's a great way to present. And of course, you can record everything you're doing. And that can later become a new product if you wish, or you can republish it on a limited time basis for people who are unable to take part in the webinar. For example, you can even create a short video this way, and then allow people to give it away. And it becomes free advertising for you. If the content's good, they'll be happy to give it away, and then it becomes free advertising for your website that way. It can become a viral video. So not only can you sell this way and create an instant product if the content is good, and not only can you use a webinar for coaching and make money directly from the coaching, but also create the videos and then resell them again and again. So it's a very quick way, as well as all the benefits that we've already detailed, that it's a good way to sell and present content. It's also a very quick way to create new products, new content for products, that you can use for potentially months and years to come in a number of formats, on DVD or CD, or even just as a streaming video on your website. But remember, always do practice runs of your webinars, especially at the start. You can do practice runs by yourself, or also with friends and colleagues, so you really get the whole presentation down smoothly. You can start with small numbers of viewers if you want, if you aren't initially comfortable presenting to large numbers, and then just take it from there. And it can be an incredibly powerful way to create new content quickly and to make many more sales.